Hello, everyone. I can't sleep, so I'm going to do some videos. Um, yeah, it's 2:30 in the morning. All right, so this video is sponsored by Intello. This is Christian Muslim Dialogue Part 1, Dr. James White and Dr. Yasir. Alrighty, before we get started, click on that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, helps me out, and you can donate to the channel through the thanks button. Just donate, request a video, your name sponsors that video. All right, this is going to be, I'm phasing. It's going to be probably 6 19-minute or so videos. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started right now. Sorry, the air's on.
I have been looking forward to this evening for a very, very long time. It has been my desire to engage in a dialogue like this, and when the opportunity came that I'd be coming into this area, I contacted Dr. Qadhi, and I put out the call, and the church here was so kind to respond and to join with us in providing a place for us to have our conversation this evening. I want you to understand what our motivations are this evening in coming together. This is not a debate. Some of you have seen debates that I have done around the world. This is not intended to be a debate. We are going to, of necessity, discuss differences that we have. The thing that makes this wonderful, and the reason that I sought out Dr. Qadhi, aside from the fact that I have learned so much from him over the years, that he's been a primary influence in my study of Islam. I am a student of Islam, and I have learned much from him. But the reason I specifically sought him out is because I sense in him such a kindred spirit on the other side of the chasm that divides us in regards to our theology and our beliefs. He is a consistent Muslim. He believes what he says. He wants to seek for consistency amongst his people and his own practice. And so when you have two believing people, one Christian, one Muslim, come together and say, we need to discuss not only what divides us, but also where do we have similarities? How can we live in the same community? And the most important thing is this. If we do what I hope happens this evening, we're going to do something absolutely unique. It hardly ever happens. And that is two communities where unfortunately there is a lot of fear on both sides. There is a lot of misunderstanding on both sides. And as a Christian, I want to see doors opened. As a Christian, I want you, as if you are a Christian here this evening, to not have fear of the Muslim people, but to have love for the Muslim people. I want the Muslim people to understand that we care and that we want to have dialogue, and that we're not seeking this evening to sweep our differences under the rug and say they don't matter. Dr. Qadhi cannot present an Islam that is just simply one view amongst many. I believe in divine revelation. He believes in divine revelation. So how do we get along? How do our communities talk to one another? The sad fact of the matter is that conversation isn't happening. And I want it to start tonight. And I want it to start here. So if you're a praying person, pray that we will have understanding, that if you're a Christian, I want you to hear what this man has to say. I want you to understand why he believes the things he does, what his life is like here in the United States as a Muslim. And I want you to hear especially when he talks about what Islam is and what it is not, and who speaks for Islam and all these types of things. I want you to hear so that we can have better communication with one another. That's why we're here this evening. I hope that's why you've come here this evening. Please, no audience reactions or participation. Let us do the conversation. We're going to have the audience questions later on. But I very much appreciate you coming here. Dr. Qadhi is a Muslim scholar. He has written books. I, for example, was very, very happy to receive from him a 16 CD series called Light and Guidance. And it tremendously helped me to get a basic understanding of, sort of get the lay of the land. He is an expert in hadith. I think I've sort of scared him a little bit by telling him that Sometimes in August in Phoenix, where I live, I have to ride at literally 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, if you can even survive. And I have distinct memories at that time in the morning of riding my bike in the desert, listening to him lecture on hadith sciences. I think even the Muslims will go, that is really weird, because I don't even think they do that. Can you get
no,
people?
They don't.
No, they don't do that.
Not
I didn't think so. That's really weird. But he is an expert in those areas. We're going to be talking about a lot of these things. We're going to be explaining what we're talking about. We want to bring everyone along, and hopefully at the end of this evening, when we go over there to have refreshments, the Christians and the Muslims together will be able to have conversation, and many of the misunderstandings that separate us right now will be laid aside. There won't be any compromise, because we both believe very firmly in what we believe and what we profess. So how, in light of that, do we get along? That's why we're here this evening. Dr. Qadhi, sir, you honor us with your presence. Thank you very, very much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I hope this is the first of many future dialogues. One of the main motivations for us to come here really was that, and I was expressing this to James. Should I call you Mr. James, Reverend James?
James is just fine.
Okay, James, and you can call me Yasir. You don't have to be formal. The Dr. Qadhi here. So I was expressing to James that in the interfaith dialogues that Muslims typically end up having, it's with people that I would consider to be a different type of Christians than the predominant strand here in Tennessee, if you get what I'm saying. In other words, most of the people that are engaged in interfaith are really not minding the fact that we have differences in theology. They don't really express any type of discomfort with us. They're very nice to us. The fact of the matter is that there is a segment of this population that has a lot of misconceptions and a lot of fears. And when we try to dialogue with them, we find that they're not really that interested to come to the dialogue table, to the interfaith events. They have these notions that translate into misunderstandings, translate into misconceptions. And, it takes two hands to shake. You can't just shake a hand that's not extended to you. So it's very important that people understand we are committed, the both of us, to our faith traditions. Our commitments are not going to be watered down. But that doesn't mean that we can't get along and have genuine love and care and concern for one another right here and now. That doesn't mean that we can't live together as peaceful neighbors. That doesn't mean that our children, or I guess in my case, my children and his grandchildren, because you're telling me about his grandchildren, that they can't get along and play together. Because you see, theology is one element, yes, but there are other elements as well to being a human. And for me and for James, theology is the most important. That's what I like. We're not going to water that down. We are very committed to our faith traditions. I passionately believe in my religion, and so does James. And I do not doubt his sincerity. I do not doubt his intentions. I do not doubt his commitment to his faith. And I know that he feels the same about me. So if we can get along and have a fruitful dialogue and conversation and show that, it's okay to disagree, even if we disagree passionately. I don't have to hate him. I don't have to feel fear against him. I can wish for guidance for him and he can wish for guidance for me. One side of me can feel a sadness or a remorse that he's not fully there yet, but I can still break bread with him. Like we did today for lunch. We had a great lunch together.
He likes really spicy Mexican, by the way, just so you know.
Ethnically, I'm Indian. I can't help liking spices, so it's like... we can break bread together. We can crack jokes together. We can watch Monty Python together. So it's... Okay, sorry. Okay. Always look on the bright side of life. But there is also quite a lot that conservative Muslims and conservative Christians have in common. So even as we understand and appreciate the differences, we don't water them down. Let us also look at the similarities so that at least we can remove the fear and distrust and hatred and suspicion of the other. Because it does no one any good if my heart is full of anger and fear and hatred of anyone else. It doesn't help me, it doesn't help him, it doesn't help our kids, it doesn't help our society. So really that's the purpose of this dialogue, is just to begin the building of bridges And I hope that this is the first of many future dialogues to take place.
So let's tackle one of the first things that causes the problem. When I speak in many places, I say, one of the biggest problems I see amongst my fellow Christians when it comes to Islam is that most of their knowledge of Islam comes from Fox News, or even worse, MSNBC, but you put the two of them together, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And so they see pictures, they're bombarded with images every single day. There's been the truck in the Christmas thing in Germany, I think it was, and all the rest of this type of stuff. Got to understand, what is Islam? And why is it that this evening you, right here in this area, are one of the primary leaders of Islam? But there would be people who would say, well, you don't really speak for Islam. ISIS is more consistent, et cetera, et cetera. Help us to start understanding, because you remember you called me once. I think you emailed me once, and you were going to be at an event. And you said, could you help me out? What's the difference between a Lutheran and a Presbyterian, or something along those lines? From your side of things look sort of confusing over here. Well, from our side of things, things look confusing as well. Help us to understand, what is Islam for you?
So the way that I feel a lot of times when I'm addressing audiences, the example that I give is, imagine somebody who's never been to America, never stepped foot in America, never met an American. And their only source of information about America is years and years of watching the Jerry Springer show. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
Now, this person...
They're just going to randomly think that a fight's going to break out for no reason, and everyone around is going to start saying, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. And everyone's looking around going, what? Who's Jerry? And why is he always getting people to fight? Jerry never did.
Has never met or visited or seen, but they're consistently bombarded with a certain type of America. And the Jerry Springer show is American in the end of the day, if you understand what I'm saying. And that's the only image they have. Now, if they meet an actual American, this uneducated foreigner will think that he knows everything about America because he's seen over and over and over and over again, years and years of episodes, right, of a show that portrays things that are atypical in America. But they are a part of the land known as America. That's the way I feel when I approach congregations or audiences, or I lecture in college, I'm a professor, that we have to begin with this notion that obviously, the primary source of information about a religion should be the broad mainstream people who follow that religion. So if you haven't visited a mosque, if you haven't socialized with a Muslim, then you really need to understand what you see on television is but the Jerry Springer equivalent. It is but one, minuscule strand. And I don't even know how else to say this other than the Islam of ISIS, or the Islam of terrorism, is not an Islam that any one of us in this audience has grown up with. Honestly, we are just as shocked as you. That's not the Islam of my parents, that's not the Islam of my mosque. This is as alien to us as it is to you. Unfortunately, the problem comes that the perception is that this is the normative, or this is the mainstream. And we're going to come eventually in the questions, I guess, to some of the causes of why this is happening. But what exactly is Islam? Well, in a nutshell, very simply, Islam is the admittance and recognition that there is one supreme God and being, who is almighty, all-powerful, all-loving, all-knowledgeable. There is only one God. That is the God of Abraham, of Moses, of Jesus, of Muhammad. That God is almighty, all-powerful, and worthy of being worshipped and venerated. No other being is worthy of being worshipped. Islam tells us that God continued to send prophets to mankind with the same message. So for the Muslim is one who is following the religion of Islam. For the Muslim, Islam is not new. It's not an Arabian religion. It didn't begin with the Prophet Muhammad. Moses, Abraham, Jesus, Adam, they're all teaching the same essential message with some fine-tunings, but the message is the same. There's one God, love Him with all your heart, worship Him to the best of your ability, and praise God and follow the law. And if you do so, you shall live peacefully. At least your heart will be at peace in this world, and you shall attain God's kingdom and God's grace in the next world. This in a nutshell is Islam, that there is but one God, this God is worthy of veneration and worship, and to be a good person, you have to believe in Him, worship Him, follow the law, obey the commandments, and if you do so, there will be a life after death, and there is heaven or hell where there is accountability. In a nutshell, Islam is the same religion that Abraham and Moses, and from our perspective, I guess we'll come to this as well, Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad taught. It's not something that began 1,500 years ago in Arabia. I guess I want to talk a little bit about, as being a Muslim, there are certain things you have to do. There's rituals that are mandatory. I'll just mention 3 of them, and there's actually 5. Right. Or I can actually mention very quickly the 5. Right. The first is the testimony of faith. And the testimony of faith is 2 sentences. I testify that there is no God worthy of worship other than the one true God. We call Him in Arabic Allah. Allah is not a foreign God. Allah is the Semitic term for God. Christian Arabs use the term Allah. Jewish Arabs, and yes, there are Jewish Arabs, use the term Allah. Allah is a Semitic term, and in Aramaic and Hebrew, there are similar cognates that mention the name of God. Elohim is essentially Allah. So there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger. That's the first of the 5 pillars. The second pillar, a Muslim is required to pray 5 times a day, every single day. There are no exceptions. In fact, holy days you do more prayers. 5 times a day, at particular time intervals you have to pray. The third pillar is charity. A Muslim is required to give charity to the poor annually. So once a year, Muslims have to calculate. There's a calculation depending on what you own and whatnot, and you have to give to the poor. The fourth pillar is to fast the month of Ramadan. So the one of the months of the Islamic calendar, from sunrise to sunset, you abstain from food and drink. And from intimacy with one spouse if you're married. And that is done to appreciate God's blessings, and also with the food and drink aspect to sympathize with the poor, to force yourself to recognize that food and drink is of the greatest blessings that God has given you. So that's done once a month. And then the fifth and final, for those who are financially and physically capable, they have to undertake a pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca once in their lifetimes. And from the Muslim perspective, Mecca is the city of Abraham and Ishmael. Mecca is the city where Abraham left Ishmael. The Bible mentions leaving Ishmael in the valley of Paran. Well, for Muslims, the valley of Paran is the valley of Mecca. And the Islamic faith basically takes its heritage from the Ishmaelic side of the progeny of Abraham.
The 5 pillars that you just mentioned, the first one is the Shahada. Mm-hmm. And so for people to understand, I normally show a video of people saying the Shahada so they can see. This is how a person becomes a Muslim. So anyone who has, and there are 7 requirements for a true Shahada. Would you still hold, because I heard you lecture on that.
So the point is that the Shahada, or the testimony of faith, it must be uttered with sincerity, with belief, with understanding. So these are the requirements.
So the fact that I've said it in Arabic doesn't mean anything because it's not joined with those.
If a professor of Arabic or Islamic studies utters the Shahada to teach his students what it is, obviously that's not an
It's not a magical thing. There has to be other things that go with it.
Exactly.
But that is what makes you, there's nothing else beyond that.
There is
That's
no
what makes
baptism, even though Islamic law strongly encourages, but it's not mandatory, to take a bath and cleanse yourself before embracing Islam. But there is no baptism. There's no other ritual. For a non-Muslim to become a Muslim, all they have to do is to verbalize the Shahada. I testify there's no God but Allah, and I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah.
Okay. Now, where does this derive from? So the primary sources of Islam. Now the 5 pillars, by the way, would the Shiites recognize the same 5 pillars?
Oh yes. The 5 pillars are universal in all strands of Islam. Shiites have the Shahada, the prayer, everything. It's exactly the same. So it is universal in all strands of Islam.
That's non-negotiable. If someone denies any of the 5, would you say that fundamentally would place them at least in a position of
clearly
bid'ah,
there are no classical mainstream groups that deny the 5 pillars. I mean, now obviously there are people that are not committed to the 5 pillars, right? I mean, Muslims aren't allowed to drink. Well, unfortunately,
I was going to say it would be hard to be committed to a religion if there's something about it that you don't just believe. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? And yeah, there are going to be people who break it. You know, like he's about to get into the alcohol situation. There are people who break it for a variety of reasons. But yeah, you shouldn't. But there are people who do cross that line.
Actually, some Muslims do drink. But if you were to see them and say, oh, aren't you not supposed to drink? Hopefully they'd say, you know, this is a sin, may God forgive me. So they'd recognize that it's a sin, they're falling short. Obviously, not all Muslims pray 5 times a day, right? By the way, FYI, interesting point. Pew, you know, the polling thing, Pew. Pew did a survey 2 years ago about rituals as practiced by all the mainstream faith traditions of the world. And according to their statistics, the #1 observed ritual across all religions and civilizations by far was the fast of Ramadan. Over 70% of the Muslim world was faithful in observing the fast of Ramadan. The next statistic was like in the 30s or something, you know. So the fast of Ramadan, for some reason, I honestly don't know why myself, the fast of Ramadan seems to have a very powerful effect on the Muslim world. And anybody who's visited any Muslim land in Ramadan, you will see the social customs and the mores change, office hours change, street traffic changes. I mean, you cannot but notice that it is the month of Ramadan in any Muslim society across the world.
And it's hard for us to keep.
I'm going to go ahead and pause it there. And this will be the end of part 1. I don't know if I'll be doing part 2 right now, but maybe come back to it. Okay. Well, I'm going to end it here. It's been interesting so far, but they just started. So, till next time, have a good day, have a good night.